Today is just fertilization, and we'll talk about fertilization and all living things. So we'll start with external fertilization. External fertilization happens outside the female reproductive tract. So with that being said, the female will deposit her eggs somewhere. Usually she releases a very large number of eggs. Why, first of all, does she release a large number of eggs?
More chances for them to get fertilized.
More chances to get fertilized. What else? Why release a whole lot of eggs? No, this one. Yeah, the likelihood that they all survive is very small. Predators will come most of the time and consume these eggs for their food. So large amounts of eggs. The female releases these eggs outside of her body. It's in an aquatic environment because they don't have shells, and we need to make sure that they don't desiccate. What is desiccation? Drying out. Right. This always, like I mentioned, it happens in an aquatic environment. Then the male will come behind her, and they don't even have to be within the same proximity. It's very common for some species to release their eggs and just leave. And then the male comes back later and deposits sperm, not knowing who the female was, but just recognizes the species of eggs. Then the eggs are fertilized by those sperm. It is also possible that two eggs that came from the same mother could be fertilized by two different males, because different males can come and deposit their sperm onto those eggs. As far as how the species court each other, how they determine where they're going to lay their eggs, we're not going to talk about individual species, but there's a lot of different ways. Not every species is the same. We do see some similarities, but there are some really crazy differences as well. So external fertilization happens outside the parent. The parental care is really small. The parents don't usually come back and take care of their kids if they lay their eggs outside of the body. Okay, internal fertilization is where the sperm is deposited inside the female reproductive tract during copulation, and copulation is the academic word for intercourse. So when sperm and egg meet, that's during the process of copulation if it's internal fertilization. The purpose of keeping the child or the babies inside, the gametes inside that female's body, is so that she can protect them. She protects those eggs. She makes sure that it's in a safe environment, a controlled environment, free from any predators or harm. As far as how these organisms court each other and their external anatomy, because there's such a varied amount of organisms on Earth and lots of different species, we won't talk about each of those, but just like with external fertilization, you see some patterns, you see some similarities, and you see some that are crazy different. So there's no specific way, there's no set footprint that it has to follow or floor plan that has to follow in order for internal fertilization to occur. There's also an option for indirect sperm deposition, which means that the two don't actually have intercourse or engage in intercourse. The male makes a spermatophore, which is just a bunch of sperm, kind of like in a little sack, and he hands it to the female, not hands it, but basically passes it off to her. And she has this like little deposit box that's kind of like the bank tube, and she puts it in there, and then it fertilizes the eggs. So that's it. Like, he hands her a bag of sperm and leaves, and she inputs the sperm and hopefully fertilizes those eggs. So that's internal fertilization. Questions there? Okay. Now, the fertilization. When fertilization occurs, sperm and egg meet. Both sperm and egg, or both gametes, should be haploid, meaning one set of chromosomes, so that when they come together and combine, they form a diploid zygote. A zygote is when you are just one cell. One egg, one sperm together has created one cell. How does the sperm know where to go? Well, with internal fertilization, sperm literally follow a scent trail. They can smell the egg, and they follow that scent all the way to the egg. We're going to watch a video here at the end today, and even though they smell, sometimes they take the wrong, some just make the wrong turn, and so they don't make it to the egg. But there is a scent path that the sperm follow in order to find that egg. That scent path is laid out by attractant molecules, and these are what we call odorants, so smells. Once the sperm meets the egg, so sperm touches egg, there is an acrosomal reaction that takes place in the sperm. Yesterday we looked at the anatomy of a sperm. He said at the very tip of it was an acrosome, and it was full of enzymes, hydrolytic enzymes. And those enzymes will hit the egg and literally break it down. Start breaking it down so that it can get to in actuality, the egg is here. There's 2 layers that protect the egg, and then the egg is here. So the sperm has to get through these 2 layers to get to the egg. So that acrosome will release those enzymes and start eating in through those 2 layers to get to that egg. Once that sperm, and it should just be one, makes it that far, and it's the first one, even though there's usually quite a few close calls, a cortical reaction takes place. Cortical reaction is where the 2 protective walls are separated from the egg. So now there's a moat here. When I usually teach this to my freshmen and I talk about it, I say it's like if you have I think of the old school castles that have those big steel doors or whatever they're made out of. And whenever they say, shut the doors or close it or pull up the bridges, that's exactly what happens. It happens just like that. The egg is separated from those 2 walls so that no other sperm can fertilize it. This is what we call a block to polyspermy. What that means is we don't want multiple sperm fertilizing that egg. Why not? I can't have more what? I can't have more than 2 sets of chromosomes. So if 2 sperm fertilize it, I now have 3 sets of chromosomes. What's going to happen with that baby? It's going to die. It's going to be selected against. Okay? And so cortical reaction is also initiated by calcium, and there's a slide that says that there. Okay? The acrosomal reaction, so this is the head of the sperm. It begins once the sperm makes contact with the egg. Then, like I mentioned, the sperm will start to dissolve, the acrosome will start to dissolve or digest those 2 walls so that the sperm will fuse with the actual egg itself. When that happens, the whole sperm does not go into the egg, just the genetic material, which is right beneath the acrosome. When we looked at the anatomy of a sperm, it went acrosome, the nucleus, then mitochondria in the midpiece, and then the flagella. Just the genetic material gets entered, and that's what's going to fuse with the female genetic material. Again, this is what we do as a block to polyspermy, so that we don't want a lot of sperm fertilizing that same egg. If you're there, you're the winner, and if you're not, well, you're not the winner. Okay, so this shows the sperm coming into contact. So we have 2 layers. We have the corona radiata and the zona pellucida. 2 layers. You can see the acrosome of the sperm has made contact with the egg. So it begins to release enzymes that will digest the 2 outer layers, the protective layers. Will continue to digest those layers until it has penetrated both layers and now it has access to the egg. Just this part, which is the nucleus of the sperm, will get dropped off. The female nucleus is down here, and they'll come together, and that's when official fertilization, when that zygote is formed. Once the sperm makes it that far, that's when the cortical reaction takes place. Cortical reaction is where the 2 separate, and that's initiated by calcium. Calcium is released. When it does that, all the sperm that have tried to fertilize that egg will get stuck, and they'll die. All the sperm that are almost through will get stuck, and they will die. Just 1 sperm will make it. That's the goal. If more than 1 sperm make it, then that child will be selected against, will not make it. Okay? So the cortical reaction is what separates the 2, preventing polyspermy. Here's what we have. This is continuing on. So the sperm had already penetrated. Now it's leaving just the nuclear material. This stuff stays out. And you can see here that calcium is released, and it separates the actual egg cell membrane from the 2 layers, the zona pellucida and the corona radiata. It separates that, and it creates that little moat. Any sperm that are caught in that moat will die. So let's watch a quick video of this happening.
Fertilization is the epic story of a single sperm facing incredible odds to unite with an egg and form a new human life. It is the story of all of us. During sexual intercourse, about 300 million sperm enter the vagina. Soon afterward, millions of them will either flow out of the vagina or die in its acidic environment. However, many survive because of the protective elements provided in the fluid surrounding them. Next, the sperm must pass through the cervix, an opening into the uterus. Usually, it remains tightly closed, but here the cervix is open for a few days while the woman ovulates. The sperm swim through the cervical mucus, which is thinned to a more watery consistency for easier passage. Once inside the cervix, the sperm continues swimming toward the uterus, though millions will die trying to make it through the mucus. Some sperm remain behind, caught in the folds of the cervix, but they may later continue the journey as a backup to the first group. Inside the uterus, muscular uterine contractions assist the sperm on their journey toward the egg. However, resident cells from the woman's immune system, mistaking the sperm for foreign invaders, destroy thousands more. Next, half the sperm head for the empty fallopian tube, while the other half swim toward the tube containing the unfertilized egg. Now, only a few thousand remain. Inside the fallopian tube, tiny cilia push the egg toward the uterus. To continue, the sperm must surge against this motion to reach the egg. Some sperm get trapped in the cilia and die. During this part of the journey, chemicals in the reproductive tract cause the membranes covering the heads of the sperm to change. As a result, the sperm become hyperactive, swimming harder and faster toward their destination.
They're still in the fallopian tubes,
At
and
long
then there's
last,
the
the
egg.
sperm reach the egg. Only a few dozen of the original 300
The first
million
layer
sperm
is the
remain.
corona radiata.
The egg is covered with a layer of cells called the corona radiata. The sperm must push through this layer to reach the outer layer of the egg, the zona pellucida. When sperm reach the zona pellucida, they attach to specialized sperm receptors on the surface, which triggers their acrosomes to release digestive enzymes, enabling the sperm to burrow into the layer. Inside the zona pellucida
There's
is
the
a
actual
narrow,
egg.
fluid-filled space just outside the egg cell membrane. The first sperm to make contact will fertilize the egg. After a perilous journey and against incredible odds, a single sperm attaches to the egg cell membrane. Within a few minutes, their outer membranes fuse and the egg pulls the sperm inside. This event causes changes in the egg membrane that prevent other sperm from attaching to it. Next, the egg releases chemicals that push other sperm away
there's all the
from
calcium.
egg and create an impenetrable fertilization membrane. As the reaction spreads outward, the zona pellucida hardens, trapping any sperm unlucky enough to be caught inside. Outside the egg, sperm are no longer able to attach to the zona pellucida. Meanwhile, inside
so
the
here's
egg,
the
the
male
tightly packed
genetic
male
material.
genetic material spreads out.
It was just made it
A
in.
new membrane forms around the genetic material, creating the male pronucleus.
So that it wound up into
Inside,
chromosomes.
the genetic material reforms into 23 chromosomes. The female genetic material, awakened by the
Next,
fusion of
finishing
the sperm
meiosis
with
II.
the egg, finishes dividing, resulting in the female pronucleus, which also contains 23 chromosomes. As the male and female pronuclei form, spiderweb-like threads, called microtubules, pull them toward each other. The two sets of chromosomes join together, completing the process of fertilization. At this moment, a unique genetic code arises, instantly determining gender, hair color, eye colour, and hundreds of other characteristics. This new single cell, the zygote, is the beginning of a new human being. And now the cilia in the fallopian tube gently sweep the zygote toward the uterus, where he or she will implant in the rich uterine lining, growing and maturing for the next 9 months until ready for birth.
That's where you started, guys. That is the story of you. Any questions on this?